In 1940, Donald Kingaby was a sergeant in the Royal Air Force Volunteer Reserve and a fighter pilot in a Spitfire. Today, he writes technical manuals. He lives with his wife and 3 children in London.
After the fall of France, I thought we were in for trouble, big trouble. But Winston Churchill's spirit had its effect on all of us. We knew that we were going to carry on, that we would fight hard, and that somehow we would win.
In 1940, Harry Siegert was a sergeant in a German Luftwaffe and a recent graduate of a bomber school. A former resident of Berlin, Germany, he works today in Los Angeles as a supervisor of computer systems.
My boyhood dream was to fly. It was for me the most beautiful and gratifying experience. Too bad it had to be through war. By the time the war ended, my wounds made flying for me impossible forever. Now I get a feeling of speed and excitement from my boat.
In the skies over war-torn Britain, the lives of Sergeants Kingaby and Siegert will cross. 2 fighting men, 1 British, 1 German, relive that moment in history. I'm Jim Bishop. In the summer of 1940, Adolf Hitler has Europe under his heel. He turns to Great Britain. The English stand alone. The German government makes it clear that surrender terms will not be harsh. But Churchill replies that the British will fight on the beaches, in the villages, and in the fields. Hitler orders his chiefs of staff to complete work on Operation Sea Lion, a detailed plan for the invasion of England. The Battle of Britain has begun. By July, 1,500 German bombers and over 1,000 fighters are concentrated within easy flying distance of the United Kingdom. One of the German airmen who will carry out Goering's orders is Sergeant Harry Siegert, stationed with a bomber squadron near Reims, France.
I would truly like to find a fighting man who isn't afraid of dying. We may feel that we can win the war, but we also know that there can be no victory without suffering and loss of life.
The situation for the British at this moment might well seem hopeless. The first line of defense are the Hurricanes and Spitfires under the command of Air Chief Marshal Sir Hugh Dowding. One airman of the handful his country depends upon is Sergeant Donald Kingaby. He is based with the 266th Squadron at Wittering, Tangmere, and Hornchurch.
When I'm flying, I carry a mascot. It's a rabbit's foot. I've had that rabbit's foot with me on every sortie I've flown so far. It is difficult to say how one reacts to the death of a close friend. Certainly one becomes more bitter towards the enemy and more determined to see the thing through, but I try not to let it affect my feelings for long.
No obstacles are allowed to stand in the way of aircraft production, yet the RAF's operational strength, down to 331 planes after Dunkirk, is now only 620. The RAF's operational strength is increased by a chain of radar stations around the coast. But in other ways as well, Britain is preparing for the inevitable conflict.
we're taking a bit of a beating. I wonder how long we can keep it up. Will we go on fighting in this way for months and months? There are times when I wonder whether we will see it through.
We wonder what the barrage balloons are good for. It is easy to get around them, but if the weather is bad, there is always the chance of running into the cables. I can't say that I have any feelings about the people down there. I can't say that I feel sorry. I'm too busy flying my machine. All I think about is reaching the target. I'm not over here to kill. I'm over here to do the best I can for Germany.
By the end of July, Britain still dominates the skies, although they have been forced to cancel all sailings through the channel during daylight.
I think the German pilots as a whole are most confident and experienced. People say that we break their formations up quickly. This isn't quite so. The Germans fight to the best of their ability as long as their fuel allows them to stay over our territory. I'm talking mainly about the fighter pilots. I have a feeling that the bomber crews are more regimented and depend entirely on their leader. When he's knocked out, there seems to be a lack of cohesion amongst the remainder of their formation. They tend to scatter and make themselves more vulnerable.
We don't underestimate the English pilot. He is well trained and has a lot of fighting spirit. But I think our flying ability really surprises them.
Craft often weave into eerie, intriguing patterns. If we can, we fly just below the height at which they form so that we won't betray our position to the enemy.
Our only defense against the enemy fighter plane are our 3 machine guns. They aim for the cockpit and wings, hoping to set the plane on fire.
In a dogfight, it's the devil of a job to control your own excitement and apprehension so that you think and fly correctly. You don't think much about the chap in the other plane. You weave, twist and turn to guard your own tail and wonder how long you dare fly straight and steady enough to shoot your target down. You can lose a lot of weight in a dogfight in a very short time.
By August, Goering estimates that he needs only 4 days to put the English fighter planes out of action. He begins the preparation of Adler Tag, or the Eagle attack, an operation intended as the knockout blow to the RAF. It is decided that the attack will commence on August 13th. For the first time in history, a great campaign is going to be fought and decided in the air.
We generally start our morning flights about 4 a.m. By the time we have breakfast, the planes have been serviced. We wonder if today we will have fighter escort and how long they will stay with us. Over England, we always have to fight low clouds. We do a lot of instrument flying.
In spite of the bad weather and unexpected opposition, they managed to hit aerodromes, dockyards, and aircraft factories. But in the process, they lose 45 of their aircraft against a British loss of only 13. Two days later, on August 15th, Goering again puts his squadrons in the air. He hopes that the heavy fighting of the 13th has so severely depleted the RAF that gaps will be left in their defenses. On this day, the Luftwaffe has made its biggest effort, nearly 1,800 sorties. They had expected an all-out victory. Instead, Adlertag is a failure. After a brief lull due to bad weather, the Luftwaffe again attacks with renewed vigor. For the British, the situation is becoming daily more serious. They are still shooting down more enemy planes than they themselves lose, but the margin is not a big one. They have now come to a point where the loss of a single plane, the death or wounding of one pilot, represents an important setback. In London and throughout all of England, the outcome of each day's battle is awaited with intense concern. The Germans continue to hammer away at the sector stations, the nerve centers of the RAF command. The repair and maintenance squadrons do their best with the overused aircraft, but it is the loss in pilots that is irreparable. Fighter command strength had stood at 1,400 pilots at the end of July. 3 weeks later, it has fallen to 1,000. Slowly, the pilot forces are being bled to death. Slowly, the communication systems and airfields are being battered to bits. Slowly, the pilot reserves are reaching dangerous lows. Now the question is, how much longer can fighter command hold out? How much longer before the Luftwaffe deals its final crushing blow? At this moment, when things are at their darkest, an incident occurs that causes a dramatic change in the German plans. At the moment when the fortunes of war seem to be tilting slowly but inexorably in favor of the Germans, something happens which sets off a train of events that alters the whole course of the war. On August 24th, 200 German bombers are sent to attack targets in widely separated parts of England and Wales. The pilots do not have orders to bomb London, but, in fact, bombs are dropped on the city.
Accidental bombing? Of course, anything is possible. But I do not think that any pilot in the German Air Force would do such a thing. Considering our military discipline, I can't believe it.
Whether this bombing is due to faulty navigation, inexperience, or irresponsibility is not known. But the fact remains, London has been bombed. British bombers are immediately ordered on a retaliatory raid to bomb Berlin the following night. The effect of this raid on Hitler is out of all proportion to the damage done. He has boasted that bombs would never be dropped on Berlin. In a speech on September 4th, he swears devastating reprisals. If they attack our cities, we will rub their cities from the map. Thus, the Luftwaffe is obliged to switch the offensive from the RAF to the city of London. Hitler believes that a prolonged bombing of London will cause panic and mass hysteria among the population. But the result is that attacks are lifted from the airfields and sector stations at a crucial moment. In this breathing space, the RAF is able to repair the damage done on their facilities and equipment, and to take the pressure off their fighter pilots. One more week of attacks might have led to disaster. Now there is time for the RAF to reconsolidate its forces. Late in the afternoon of Saturday, September 7th, this new phase of German strategy is launched. From a forward air base, Goering himself watches the flights take off toward the English coast. It is a time chosen to catch the English workers on their way home. 300 tons of high explosives and many thousands of incendiaries are dropped on London within an hour and a half. Started in this raid cannot be put out before more bombers arrive later that night with another load. Between 5 o'clock on this Saturday evening and 3 o'clock the following morning, German bombs killed 1,000 Londoners. Goering is prompted to announce on the German radio, "This is an historic hour. Our Air Force has delivered its thrust right into the enemy's heart." It is true. London's heart has been damaged, but it has not stopped beating. It is felt that because of the size of this raid, the German invasion is imminent. Still, the first requirement for a successful invasion has not been met. Fighter command has not been defeated. Hitler decides to await the outcome of the next few days. The outcome is that fewer than half the German bombers succeed in dropping their bombs. Hitler, still hoping that the British will crumble under the repeated air attacks on their capital, again postpones his decision to invade. He has been assured that air supremacy is almost within his grasp. A victory must be forced with no more delay. Goering picks Sunday, September 15th as the day of reckoning. The morning of September 15th turns out to be ideal flying weather. At about 10:30 a.m., the radar warning system picks up enemy planes gathering over the French coast. To the waiting English pilots, the German armadas appear to stretch from horizon to horizon. After the first attack by the British planes, the mighty formations begin to lose cohesion.
Every single aircraft is engaged and there is nothing left on the ground in the way of reserves. But the Luftwaffe is taking a beating. They aren't getting away scot-free.
We keep on firing as the fighters close in. We shoot back with everything we have.
This great battle, which was to have crushed fighter command, proves instead a shattering blow to the German airmen. The Luftwaffe has been routed. Again, the gamble is lost. On September 17th, Hitler postpones Operation Sea Lion until further notice.
I had a plane loaded with paratroops, all crack troops, veterans of Rotterdam. The invasion being cancelled is a big disappointment to all of us.
But the British cannot know the extent of their victory, for a new phase of the battle has begun. The German Luftwaffe has set out with vengeance to destroy London. Night after night until well in November, London is bombed unmercifully. After 57 days of consecutive bombardment, London proves she can take it. By November, the night raids are expanded to include the industrial cities of Britain. Coventry is viciously attacked on November 14th, as are Bristol, Southampton, and Liverpool.
We are hit. I call to the rest of the crew for damage reports. No one answers. The machine will not react. It's hard to fly.
The Blitz will continue well into May 1941. Then it will cease, as suddenly as it has begun. Sergeant Harry Siegert, after being hit over Coventry, is shot down by a Spitfire over the Channel. He will spend many weeks in a German hospital. Later, he fights at Stalingrad and the Battle of the Bulge, and is captured by the Russians in 1945. Sergeant Donald Kingaby pilots numerous missions for the Royal Air Force and is credited with 23 enemy aircraft brought down. During the Battle of Britain, the Luftwaffe lost over 2,300 aircraft. The British lost 600 fighters. The citizens of Britain paid an even greater price. So concludes history's last great air duels.
Malta, to most of the men in my group, was just a romantic name. None of us ever dreamed that this completely isolated rock would become the thickest thorn in our side.
Robert Kovalevsky was a Luftwaffe bomber commander during World War II and participated in raids against the island of Malta. Today, he operates a foundry in Witten, Germany. Douglas Alfred Adcock served aboard a British cruiser during the siege of Malta. Today, a civil servant, he lives in Leicester, England.
The truth of the matter is that I was bored with my job on the post office, so I joined the Royal Marines. The uniform attracted me. I didn't anticipate getting caught up in the mess on Malta, but I did.
In the struggle for Malta, the lives of Douglas Adcock and Robert Kovalevsky came together for a brief moment. Two fighting men, one Englishman, one German, relived that moment in history. In 1940, to Benito Mussolini, the British position at Malta is untenable. The island outpost is over 1,000 miles from the nearest British bases at Gibraltar in the west and Alexandria in the east. Still, it is only 20 minutes by air from Italian Sicily. Whoever controls Malta is traffic cop of the Mediterranean. In 1940, that policeman wears a British uniform. On June 11, one day after Italy enters the war, Mussolini makes his move. People take to the old historic caves and catacombs. These shelters have been enlarged so that every civilian on Malta can go underground. The Maltese have a tradition of withstanding siege. The Italians raid the island colony 8 times the first day and 30 more times in the first week. No medals are won for bombing accuracy. Operating from Malta is HMS Penelope, a light cruiser. Aboard on a gun crew is Royal Marine Douglas Alfred Adcock.
We put back into port and go on leave. Food supplies are still good, and one can still enjoy Maltese hospitality at the restaurants. The only noticeable change is the dear prices of food and the dearer prices of drinks. My first reactions to the bombings are average, I suppose. Quite a bit of rubble about, but no real damage. The Maltese people themselves, however, appear somewhat jittery. Everyone waiting for the sirens to start up and then dash off for the shelters. Or at least, so it seems to me. The Italians have been at us quite spasmodically from rather high levels. They seldom come into range, and it's a bit of a laugh. Nobody worries much over it, but they have forced us to abandon our leisurely ways.
After 6 months of bombing, the British naval and military installations remain intact. Submarines and seaplanes emerge from Malta and torpedo Axis supply vessels en route to Africa. The Mediterranean that the fascists have sometimes called our sea is still anybody's lake. January 1941, an entire German air fleet, Luftwaffe 2, is yanked from the Russian campaign and moved to Sicily. Field Marshal Albert Kesselring is given control of 2,000 first-line aircraft. Kesselring's mission: gain control of air and sea between South Italy and North Africa. In other words, blitz Malta. In command of a group of 40 Luftwaffe bombers is 27-year-old Captain Robert Kovalevsky.
The group which I command consists of 40 bombers with a crew of 4 men each. These crews are all professional soldiers. From our missions over Norway, France, and England, we have become welded together in strong unity. The cooperation and spirit among us is very high. I am very proud to lead them. The real purpose behind our aerial attacks is to prepare Malta for invasion by our paratroops. Therefore, the destruction of the 3 aerodromes and all harbor installations is essential. Once this is accomplished, our invasion will have no difficulty in succeeding. From an altitude of 3,000 meters, we commence our bombing run. The British have fortified Malta with excellent anti-aircraft batteries. Not as many as we experienced over London, but their accuracy is deadly. No matter how often we bomb the airfields, the British always seem able to keep one in operation. Their ability to repair the runways with such speed is astounding to us. The biggest holes and bomb craters are filled within 24 hours. We have to admire their perseverance, but how long can they hope to keep it up?
Our fire is controlled by the gunnery director, but in these hot situations, he often gets so busy ranging other guns that my crew goes into local control, firing at the first jerry that crosses our sights. The enemy planes come and go so quickly, we are forever switching targets. With everyone hopping about, it is impossible to determine if our crew has scored any hits. It doesn't really matter so long as the final tally is big.
By December, Malta has withstood 1,000 Axis raids. And still the tempo of the air raids mounts steadily. Malta, only 15 miles long, becomes the most heavily bombed target in the world. The equivalent of a blitz on Coventry is repeated every 18 hours for a month.
Normally, we fly just 2 attacks in one day. However, when the moon is full, we are alerted to bomb around the clock. Then we fly as many as 6 missions. This puts a great strain on everyone. Soon your head is buzzing from the engine noise. Your ears feel they will burst. Your eyes cannot stand the intense light. Your mouth is a burning desert. Your heart wants to stop beating, and your mind barely remembers the details of flying. In war, you cannot help but think of the odds of surviving. They are decidedly against you. This realization brings you face to face with your Schweinehund, the inner cowardice which everyone has in the face of danger. possibility of a forced landing at sea is always on our minds. I recently lost one of my best crews. I watched the sea swallow them without pity.
April 17th, embattled Malta wins a decoration for bravery. King George VI awards the island the Order of the George Cross, marking the first time the medal is given to a people rather than an individual. The award ceremony is cut short by the arrival of uninvited guests.
The George Cross is quite a boost to the civilian population, though it doesn't mean much to us, the service personnel. But the people apparently think quite a lot of it, and I'm glad to see them receive it. We have so few fighter aircraft left that our guns have really become our first and only line of defense. From a point of view of aerial warfare, this is quite ridiculous. And unless we get more fighters in to remedy the situation, we can't last.
There are now only 8 British aircraft operating against some 15 Axis squadrons. Malta's need, says the air officer commanding, is Spitfires, Spitfires, and more Spitfires. There is not a single British aircraft carrier available for the dangerous but urgent mission to Malta. The Prime Minister appeals to the President of the United States. The response is immediate. The American carrier Wasp brings British Spitfires into the Mediterranean. April 29th, the desperately needed Spitfires arrive on Malta, but not for long. German radar has alerted the Axis air fleet at Sicily. Before the Spits can refuel, the Luftwaffe strikes. Every Spitfire is destroyed or disabled. On the same day, the British intelligence learns that an airborne invasion from Sicily is imminent. German and Italian paratroops on Sicily trained vigorously for the airborne invasion of Malta. Hitler and Mussolini fixed the date of the Axis assault for early June. April 30th, 1942. Malta has been under steady aerial siege for 23 months. The British no longer have aeroplanes, and pitifully little ammunition left for the anti-aircraft batteries. But the island's excellent shelters have kept human casualties incredibly low.
I went along with the civilians into a shelter, quite a good one, deep underground. I found it overflowing with people, some of them huddled together and crying. Most of them have been living in here for months. Never before this have I had such a sense of mass humanity, so utterly helpless. When the all clear sounds, I come back into the light, and I say to myself, this is the last time I ever go into one of those shelters, no matter how many Jerrys come.
May 9th, 1942. The Wasp stings a second time. The American aircraft carrier successfully delivers a second batch of Spitfires to within flying range of Malta. Spits are refueled and airborne in minutes as German bombers approach for a quick kill. They meet the Junkers and Messerschmitts head-on over the airfield. The Luftwaffe gets more than it bargains for. 37 German planes lost as against 3 Spitfires. Next day, the British meet with even greater success. Though still outnumbered, the Spitfires possess greater speed, firepower, and maneuverability. In bitter and continuous air fighting, they shoot down 60 German planes. The Blitz is over. British intelligence learns that Axis troops scheduled to invade Malta have been diverted to the Panzer Army in Africa. The invasion of Malta will not take place. Saved from one ordeal, the beleaguered island now undergoes another. Malta continues to be dependent on the outside world for such things as grain, meat, and gasoline. The Germans commence starvation tactics. In June, British convoys attempt to reach the island from both Gibraltar and Alexandria. 115 Allied vessels, only 2 get through. Rationing takes its toll. Morale sinks. Fuel is low. Community kitchens barely feed 100,000. The British set a target date for surrender. Beyond that date, there will be no food. A message from Malta reads, "Very worst must happen if we cannot replenish vital needs." At the end of July, the secret target date for surrender draws near. Oil is all but gone. The fate of Malta hangs on receiving supplies by mid-August. Churchill's message, hold and we win. Operation Pedestal, a convoy carrying the last hope for the relief of Malta, leaves England. 14 merchant ships carrying over 120,000 tons of supplies are escorted by 4 aircraft carriers, 40 destroyers, 2 battleships, and 12 cruisers. The reinforced convoy is too big to conceal from the Germans. August 10th, the strongest fleet ever to sail to Malta enters the Mediterranean. Converging against it, a powerful German-Italian force, spearheaded by 21 submarines and 540 aircraft. August 12th. At high noon, the Axis air attack is in full force. British carrier planes and concentrated ack-ack fire again keep the attackers well away from the merchantmen. But finally, 40 Stuka bombers drive right through the barrage. By 8 o'clock, fleet and convoy reach the Narrows, where protective battleships and carriers must turn back because of restricted sea room. The merchantmen must now squeeze through the channel with only a skeleton escort. Crippled merchantmen make port at Malta. They bring food, but no petrol. The tanker Ohio, an American ship with an all-British crew, carries that petrol, Malta's sole hope for survival. With its back broken and its main deck freely washed by the sea, the slowly sinking tanker staggers into harbor with its precious cargo. Malta has survived its darkest hour. Moment, the conclusion of our story. Robert Kovalevsky, after the Malta operations, participates in attacks on convoys from western France. As the war ends, he is a lieutenant colonel in command of a squadron of Arado jet bombers. He spends 2 years as a prisoner of war. Douglas Adcock is aboard HMS Penelope when the ship is sunk by a mine in the Anzio campaign. He later fights in Pacific operations against Japan. He separates from the Royal Marines 2 years after the war's end. The rocky island of Malta proves to be the most important factor for British victory in Africa, hastening defeat for the Desert Fox and making the Mediterranean a truly British sea. On the bottom of that sea lie more German and Italian soldiers than under desert sands, and more war material than the Axis used in the entire African campaign.
On board a commerce raider was regarded as dangerous, which is to say that one's return was doubtful.
At the beginning of the war, Dr. Werner Hasselmann was chief surgeon in the Municipal Hospital of Neumünster, Germany. In 1940, he was assigned to commerce raider HK-33. Today, he again holds his old position in Neumünster. In 1940, Anthony Marshall was a sub-lieutenant on the heavy cruiser HMS Cornwall. Today, he is a director of an investment firm in London.
Looking back now, my main feeling with regard to the Navy is one of gratitude, for it was a well worthwhile career. Certainly, I fulfilled the adage, join the Navy and see the world.
A few hundred miles off the coast of Africa, the lives of Lieutenant Marshall and Dr. Hasselmann crossed. 2 fighting men, 1 English, 1 German, relived that moment in history. I'm Jim Bishop. From the beginning of the war, it is apparent to Germany that the way to beat England is to starve her. The shipping routes which connect the British islands with the rest of the world will have to be cut. But Germany's U-boats and battleships are too few to do the job. A new weapon is needed. A ship that can prowl the Atlantic sea lanes in disguise, approach an unsuspecting merchantman, drop the camouflage, and send her victim to the bottom. The weapon is found in the deadly Commerce Raider. June 16th, 1940. Off the coast of Germany, a merchant ship flying no flag has orders to proceed secretly to an operations area in the Indian Ocean, where she will sink or capture Allied merchant ships. She is the Hilfskreuzer 33. On her bridge is Captain Ernst Felix Kreider. She is one of 9 similar ships in the first wave of German raiders who will roam the enemy shipping routes as masked sea bandits. To all outward appearances, she is harmless, but in her bows, cleverly camouflaged behind concealed panels, are 6 15-centimeter guns, 4 torpedo tubes, and a seaplane. Captain Kreider christens his ship the Penguin. He commands a hand-picked crew of 400 men. One of them is an experienced surgeon, recently drafted into the Navy, Dr. Werner Hasselmann.
I have been assigned as a ship's doctor. Because of the specialty of this command, I have received additional training as a dentist. We have been told that our ship will be away from our home base for a year or more.
Late in July, a tropic sun and the sight of dolphins marks the nearing of the equator. The crew of HK-33 celebrate the crossing of the line in the immemorial manner of the sea.
Nobody can blame us if we forget about the war for a while.
July 31st. The 6,000-ton British freighter Domingo de Larrinaga is spotted and attacked. Before sinking, the freighter sends out distress signals, which are picked up by the British in Freetown. But the British base their plans for interception on faulty calculations. HK-33 escapes undetected. One success already on her log, HK-33 sends out its seaplane to search for other enemy ships. On August 26th, a tanker is sighted. The Norwegian tanker Filefjell is captured with a cargo of gasoline and fuel oil bound for Cape Town. The following day, 2 ships are sent to the bottom. The tanker British Commando and the Norwegian freighter Morviken hit by a torpedo. In late September, HK-33 sinks another freighter and captures the 9,000-ton tanker Storstad. October, the Penguin begins mine-laying operations between Newcastle and Sydney. On November 8, 1940, news is received that the first ship to be lost in the minefields is the neutral American freighter City of Rayville. It is the first American ship to be sunk by the Germans in World War II. By the end of November, HK-33 has sunk or captured 11 Allied ships. The raider Penguin has been an enormous success. The effect of such sinkings is a cause of considerable alarm to the Allies. Shipping is rerouted. Delays become necessary. Sailings are generally made in convoys, escorted by a handful of available destroyers and cruisers. One such escort ship is the heavy cruiser HMS Cornwall, on convoy duty in the Indian Ocean. On board is a young graduate of the Dartmouth Royal Naval College, Sub-Lieutenant Anthony Marshall.
We are engaged in convoy duties ranging between West Africa, Durban, Aden, Bombay, Colombo, and Fremantle. It is common knowledge that one or more German raiders are now operating in the Indian Ocean. There is even a rumor that a German pocket battleship is supposed to be here. Because of this, we have to keep our ships widely dispersed. In these vast expanses, the work of a cruiser looking for a German raider would be utterly impossible without aircraft. Without these eyes, a ship would have very little chance of finding a raider, which might be hundreds of miles away. During these many months outside of home waters, and during which we have neither a sniff nor sign of the enemy, we think of our families often. We feel angry frustration that we are living a seemingly peaceful and undisturbed existence while those at home are suffering through the Blitz. When going aboard a ship on a boarding party, one must be prepared for anything. One's reception is always in doubt. I never know whether I'll be met with a bullet or be received in a friendly and cooperative fashion. It gives me an occasional opportunity for a bit of excitement and a break in the monotony of routine cruiser duties.
December 8th, the Penguin meets its famous sister ship, the Atlantis, at a secret rendezvous point in the Atlantic, codenamed Andalusia. These two mystery ships are the most hunted vessels on the high seas.
The supply boat has brought many bags of mail, and we have each received a great amount of letters from family and friends. I'm very happy because I have many photographs from home. Our female prisoners complicate the situation somewhat. Many of our crew have had to turn the cabins over to the women. But I think that none of these prisoners have ever complained about unfavorable treatment.
Captain Kreider uses some of his captured ships as temporary scouts or supply vessels. When their usefulness is finished, they are either sunk or dispatched to German ports with prize crews and prisoners. In December, the Penguin heads for the Antarctic in search of Norwegian whalers operating for the Allies. Captain Kruder has learned the approximate position of the whaling fleet from documents given him by the skipper of the Atlantis. The Norwegians, completely unaware of the raiders' presence, continue their usual whaling activities. Telephone traffic between the whaling fleet is picked up by the Penguin's radio operators. From these conversations, the Germans are able to make directional bearings, and they begin to close in on their unsuspecting victims. The Norwegian whaling fleet is captured without a shot being fired. 3 freighters and 11 whale catchers in the most spectacular raid of commerce warfare. Under German guard, the Norwegians are ordered to complete their whaling operations.
It is all very interesting for us. We have never seen a whale at close quarters before. The great beasts are hoisted onto the deck and flayed. The flesh is cut into great slices and fed into the tanks where the whale oil is extracted. The Norwegians carry on the work as usual, and their attitude towards us is not openly unfriendly.
The Penguin and the captured whalers meet the pocket battleship Admiral Scheer at Andalusia.
We fall to in our white uniforms, but the parade discipline is not strict. The 2 ships pass each other so closely that old acquaintances wave to each other and shout friendly greetings. When we are actually opposite, the waving and cheering is tremendous. It is like a school reunion.
March 12th, 1941. HK-33 arrives at Fort Kouvru in the Kerguelen Islands. Here in this rocky and uninhabited spot of land in the southern Indian Ocean, HK-33 can replenish her fresh water. A stream is dammed below a waterfall, and the water carried out to sea by an ingenious system of pipes and hoses. The island abounds in wild ducks, stormy petrels, gulls, seals, and rabbits. Those of the crew not on duty are allowed ashore in small parties. Before HK-33 sails, she is disguised as the Norwegian freighter Tamerlan. For once, Captain Kreider has time to carry out this change of appearance. March 25th. HK-33 is once again at sea and searching for new victims. Each day her reconnaissance plane is sent out, but the Indian Ocean seems to be swept bare. The main shipping routes are little used now, as Allied ships stick close to the coast for protection. April 25th, the 7,000-ton Empire Light goes to the bottom. She was bound for Durban with ore and hides. fight is followed 3 days later by the Clan Buchanan, carrying 7,000 tons of Army and Air Force equipment from the United States to Madras. May 7th, 1941, HK-33 sights a tanker, the British Emperor. Although in flames and sinking, the British Emperor sends out distress signals that describes the appearance and exact position of the enemy raider. At 6 a.m., HMS Cornwall, en route to the Seychelles Islands to refuel, picks up the distress signals from the British Emperor.
The position given is about 500 miles due north of us. We turn immediately and increase our speed. One feels an aura of expectation about. Most of us, I'm sure, are wondering and hoping that the last months of routine duty and patrols are at last going to bring us to grips with the enemy. One of our aircraft has sighted a merchant ship about 60 miles to the west of our position. The aircraft reports that the ship has hoisted signal letters which identify her as the Norwegian ship Battleline. Battleline is not on our list of ships that we might expect to meet in this area at this time.
I learned that a small dot has been sighted over the horizon. Everybody is suddenly aware of the seriousness of the situation. But to give up our ship, or even destroy it, is out of the question. It is clear by now that these planes belong to a warship. We are hoping that our ship is so well camouflaged that it will give the impression of being a Norwegian freighter.
The Cornwall sends messages ordering the freighter to stop for a search. HK-33 attempts to mislead it by sending light signals asking for help. Still, the Cornwall advances. HK-33, realizing that the game is up, takes down the Norwegian flag and hoists the German battle ensign. Its radio officer sends a message to the German Naval Command. Am now engaged with British heavy cruiser Cornwall. Minutes after the battle begins, a salvo of 4 shells score direct hits on the raider. The last shell bursts in number 5 hold containing the mines.
There are a number of survivors in the water, all oil-stained and disheveled. We lower our boats and hang our lines down from our sides and in one way or another pick them up. To my amazement, I realized that quite a few of the survivors are British officers and men who have been victims of the radar. All of them, British, Lascars and Germans, are dazed and shocked.
It is indeed sad to see how very few have escaped. It is some consolation to us to know that our comrades died quickly and did not suffer. The British captain makes a short speech in which he praises the fairness and courage of the German enemy, when he mentions with satisfaction that with the sinking of the Penguin, which has sailed the seas like a ghost ship, the most dangerous and most successful of all German commerce raiders has been destroyed.
Of a crew of 341 men, only 60 escaped death. Of the 240 prisoners of war on board at the time of the attack, only 27 survived. Captain Kreider is among those who have gone down with HK-33. In a moment, the conclusion of our story. Dr. Hasselmann is placed in a prisoner of war camp. In 1943, he will be exchanged as a non-combatant and sent home to Germany. There he will spend the remaining months of the war attached to a field hospital near Neumünster. Lieutenant Marshall is on board Cornwall when she is sunk by a Japanese battle fleet off Ceylon in 1942. Later, he will volunteer for submarine duty and will take part in the North African landings and will participate in actions in Norwegian waters. The German raider Penguin captured or sank 28 ships, totaling nearly 136,000 tons. It is a record unique in the history of naval warfare.
We are called the Green Devils. Our motto is, you never gain anything if you are not willing to risk everything.
In 1941, Fritz Mitthäufer was a sergeant and a paratrooper in the Fallschirmjäger Division. Today, he is a service representative for an automobile agency in Hollywood, California. In 1941, Gordon Leyburn Smith was a captain in the Royal Australian Artillery, assigned to the defense of Crete. Today, an architect, he lives in Stirling, South Australia.
People are inclined to regard war either in heroic or sentimental terms. As far as I'm concerned, all the war did to me was to make me grow up.
On the Aegean island of Crete, the lives of Gordon Leyburn Smith and Fritz Mitthäufer came together for a brief moment. Two fighting men, one Australian, one German, relived that moment in history. March 1941. In 5 months of bitter fighting, the legions of Mussolini have failed to conquer Greece. Hitler comes to the rescue of his Axis partner with blitzkrieg. Within 1 month, the swastika flies over the Acropolis. British expeditionary troops are forced to evacuate to the island of Crete. On the 1st of May 1941, over 27,000 disorganized British, Australian, and New Zealand soldiers are evacuated to Crete, an important British base covering Greece, Turkey, Palestine, and Suez. One of these soldiers, a troop commander in the 23rd Australian Field Regiment, is Captain Gordon Laban Smith.
We land in Crete with no equipment whatever, not even a rifle amongst us. The troops generally are fit, but very, very tired. And units which have been badly split up and they came off the evacuation beaches have to be regrouped. We're completely exhausted, and the first 2 weeks we spend under the olive trees around Suda Bay, just resting and trying to build up our strength. There is a large remnant who, having no leaders, are inclined to roam around in bands. As we are unequipped, we remain in the Suda Bay area.
The men and officers who have arrived on Crete are bitterly aware of their recent defeat. The supplies of ammunition and equipment are inadequate. Air protection is practically non-existent. Crete is 160 miles long. It possesses a large deep-water harbor at Suda Bay and 3 airfields at Malimi, Ritimo, and Iraklion. Whoever controls Crete dominates the East Mediterranean. The German General Staff has maintained that mastery of the Eastern Mediterranean is dependent on the capture of Crete. Having conquered Greece, the question of Crete must now be settled. It is the method of invasion that is open to debate. The Germans are aware of the might of the British fleet, so Reichsmarshal Goering urges an invasion by air. Only Hitler hesitates. The paratroop corps represents the elite of the youth movement. Goering is persistent. Hitler issues Directive Number 28. The flower of the German Reich will form the backbone of Operation Mercury, set for May 20th. One of these paratroopers, in training with the crack 7th Airborne Division, is Sergeant Fritz Mitthäufer.
The training is very difficult. We learn to fall onto ground that is nearly as hard as concrete. We are trained in offensive action only, never how to defend ourselves. If we ask an officer about defense, he looks at us as if we were mad. When we have successfully passed these tests, we are allowed to jump. Parachute jumping is wonderful. One comes down so slowly, so peacefully. It is quite a sport.
On May 12th, British intelligence reports a German invasion of Crete is imminent. The defending force on the island, known as Creforce, is composed chiefly of Greeks, New Zealanders, and Australians. Churchill states that the island will be defended to the last man.
Our positions are well concealed. We're excited at the prospect of once more meeting up with the Germans. We're expecting an attack, but as the days wear on, rather hope it will never come. These first days are particularly wearing, as food is extremely light on, and having nothing in particular to do, we brood far too much on the fact that the only planes we see are German, and they are almost continually overhead. There is no doubt about it. The Germans are having it all their own way. About the 14th of May, things brighten up considerably when rumour goes round that there are some guns available and that our regiment is to take them over. On the next day, 4 Italian 75s arrive, towed by trucks, and I am given command of these in order to take them to a place called Georgiopolis. We are very confident that we will be able to deal with anything the enemy offers, so long as we are not bombed into the ground beforehand.
Under Operation Mercury, the Germans planned to land 15,000 men from the air, a unique development in the art of warfare. An additional 7,000 men will invade the island from the sea. The German objectives: take the airstrip at Malimi and the towns of Hanya, Ritimo, and Heraklion. On the morning of May 20th, 1941, the German airborne forces are ready.
Our officers have briefed us. We can expect light enemy resistance. We are confident that our objectives can be captured quickly.
German air strength totals over 1,200 aircraft, including 500 Yonker transports and hundreds of gliders. The 1st Airborne Army is on its way to its first test. May 20th, 1941, 7 a.m. The German invasion force appears over the island of Crete.
Us are light-hearted. We tell jokes and laugh and keep up our morale this way. I do not give a thought to dying because I'm sure that I will live.
I'm at my observation post on the top of a hill. Suddenly, the whole ground seems to shake with the throbbing noise of approaching planes.
We are told, prepare to jump. Then comes the order, ready to jump. The moment has arrived, the word comes, go!
spring sky is filled with hundreds of varied colored chutes. A British soldier remarks that they look like balloons coming down at the end of a party.
We have a perfect grandstand view. As a spectacle, the landings are magnificent. They come down endlessly. Most of the chutes are white, but some are red, others blue. The little figures hanging on the ends of the parachutes look not so much formidable as pathetic.
Paratroopers land on top of the waiting British. The invasion is off to a bad start when the gliders in which the commanding general and his staff are traveling crashes on takeoff. The command quickly passes to other hands, but not without confusion. In spite of staggering losses, the gliders and transports managed to land more than 5,000 men in the area of the Malimi airfield, the main target. Punctually at 11 a.m., more German transports appear and drop equipment and ammunition to the waiting paratroopers. The Australian troops at Malemi capture a complete German battle plan and succeed in breaking the code. Creforce troops are able to signal the German transports into dropping ammunition and food supplies to them instead.
The Luftwaffe gives us as much support as they can, but there is much confusion. Many of our high officers have been killed, and one cannot get definite orders or information. They have had heavy casualties. The British are well covered in ditches and trenches. We try to remember all the things we were told in training. My duty is to run from battalion to regimental headquarters, to keep them in touch with each other. I must get the messages through at whatever cost. I have strict orders to stay away from any action, but this is impossible. There is fighting going on everywhere.
The results of the first day's fighting are costly for the Germans. The death knell has been sounded for the 7th Parachute Division, whose casualties are enormous. Hitler is so alarmed that he forbids the Berlin radio to mention the invasion until the outcome of the battle is absolutely certain.
Messages from Retamo and Heraklion indicate that the fighting there is going well for us. But it's apparent that conditions at Malemi have deteriorated badly. We must hold out here. If the Malemi airstrip is lost, the whole of the island can be lost too.
By nightfall, the airfields at Retamo and Heraklion remain in the hands of the British, but at Malemi, the situation is perilous. The New Zealanders at Malimi have failed to counterattack during the night, with the result that the Germans have obtained a foothold on the airfield. Now the Germans throw half a battalion of paratroopers into this position, oblivious to losses.
Our commander has told us, push on. We move about 100 or 200 yards at a time. It is ambush fighting, and I don't like it. However, Stukas fly over and give us some protection. Our morale goes up when we see the planes.
The Germans continue to bring in their men, and their bombers are almost always overhead. Without any air power, it's quite impossible for our troops to attack. We fire all day onto the aerodrome. Several men have been wounded and are sent to the rear. One gun has gone out of action due to mechanical failure, but a chap remains at his post, calmly repairing the weapon.
The Malimi airfield is now fully operational, and German strength increases rapidly. On the morning of May 21st, a portion of the British fleet is subjected to heavy air bombardment. The cruiser Juno is hit and sinks within 2 minutes. That evening, the Royal Navy intercepts a German troop convoy off the coast. The British sink a dozen German Caiques and 3 steamers loaded with invasion troops. A few hours later, another German landing force is routed. 5,000 reinforcements fail to reach Crete. On the 23rd, the British pay a heavy price for their tactical victories of the 2 preceding days. German fighters catch the entire Mediterranean fleet without fighter protection. The cost to the British, 1 battleship, 4 cruisers, and 8 destroyers, sunk or out of action, and other units severely damaged. The fleet is forced to withdraw. May 26th, continuous air bombardment has reduced the British forces to small, isolated, and immobile units. Both sides pay heavily for this island. The Germans, near exhaustion because of the heavy fighting of the last few days and running low in ammunition, make a desperate assault on Hanya, the doorway to Suda Bay. After a night of intense fighting, the Germans managed to breach the British lines. The front is broken, and further British resistance becomes futile.
The Australians and New Zealanders are tough fighters. When we approach their lines, we are worried. But we find their positions are empty most of the time. They have left, pulled back. Maybe they find out that we are ready to move in. Certainly, the end of this fighting will not be far off.
Early in the morning of May 27th, the decision is taken to evacuate Crete. The last retreat from Europe begins.
From now on, it is a matter of getting back to the beach at Sparkia in the best order that we can. The withdrawal is carried out superbly, and at no time turned into a rout. The roads do not appear to be filled with troops, and the guns always have easy travelling without traffic jams. The infantry moves back steadily, if wearily. The whole effect is curiously gentle, but this is still the gentleness of a wild beast, worn down by the hunting pack, but still quite willing and eager to rip and tear if approached too closely. The Germans are still to find that we are not yet beaten, and they are given no chance to rush us or to hurry us. We are hungry, we are tired, we are angry, and we cannot or will not understand why we are once more moving in the wrong direction. If we must move this way, we will do it in our own time. The Germans can occupy the ground behind us, but only at our pleasure.
"15,000 British are saved from the rocky beaches, but 13,000 are left behind, killed or captured."
This is the final bitterness. Ahead of us looms long years of heartbreaking prison life, but this is in the future. At present, we are too near exhaustion to even think. I'm proud to say that the men who are forced to surrender on the beach at Sfakia, my friends from Australia, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom, are still undefeated.
Within 10 days, Crete has fallen.